Hey everybody. This month we're doing Identity by Milan Kundera. When I was late teens, early 20s, there's a book called The Unbearable Lightness of Being that a lot of people in my circle of friends were reading. So I read it and I really liked it back then. And I didn't expect to read one of his other works, maybe The Joke or something, which we have a copy of. But Identity was short, and I figured why not. And overall, I kind of liked it. So it's kind of the story of a man and a woman who have been in a relationship for a while, but it kind of starts to unravel. And I think it kind of speaks to the reasons why relationships crumble. And this story kind of brings those to the forefront. It kind of reminded me of a theme that we started kind of noticing even from books that we've been reading for the booktube from this era, and where you're delving into the advertising culture and the consuming culture and the inner workings of it and what it does to people's minds, basically, as consumers and as people that work in that industry. And there were a lot of comparisons in my mind to Americana, because there are certain parts of the story. I think this came out way after Americana did, but there are certain points in this story where they're very similar. Like when Chantal, the main character, ends up in an orgy where she feels very uncomfortable and feels like she narrowly escapes it. And I don't think she seems a little apprehensive and scared, but it isn't like a horror movie. But to us, it's a horror scene. It's like a bad nightmare, kind of. And that happens in Americana. And she works for an advertising agency where when she's with her advertising friends, the people act similarly to the way that they do in Americana. And they also talk about the same thing. Like the campaigns are similarly designed. The people act similarly in a stereotypical way. So I thought that was kind of interesting. What about you?
So the book wasn't really my cup of tea, but like I understand when I was reading it, Mike mentioned to me, like, reminded him also of Silent Patient and Americana. And I kind of got those vibes because like there was like a thriller aspect, because in the beginning of the book, I forgot what was the husband's name? Jean-Marc. Each chapter is like one of their POVs. So first we see Jean-Marc and he's looking for his wife. And then he, through conversations with her, learns that like she makes an offhanded comment basically saying like men don't look at me anymore. Kind of to that degree. So like he also starts, unbeknownst to the reader, but I kind of knew once it was happening, that he was like sending her letters but anonymously. And like that could have been like a thriller aspect, because through a portion of the book, Chantal is trying to unearth who's the penman of this letter, who's writing her these things. Some of the things that's mentioned in these letters are very intimate, so how would this person know? So like there's like a thriller quote unquote aspect. I also think what the author was getting at is, like Mike mentioned, like the marriage and it essentially like at some point falling apart, like due to insecurities in both of the individuals. But I think more so for Chantal, because I think there was like a high focus on her at one point before she met Jean-Marc. She was previously married, and in that marriage she did have a child. Sadly, that child passed away. It's not a heavy part of the book, but it is like mentioned in passing. So it's like I feel like the title of Identity and everything, that's also do like more for Chantal, because at this point in the book, not only was she once a mother, but now she's also going through menopause, so her body's changing, her outlook at life is changing, and like it was kind of mentioned, and maybe it was my general takeaways, that she was at some point in the book was kind of relieved that her child passed away. Is that wrong? Because she does mention relief when she was at the child's grave.
Well, no, she mentions that she felt relief because it freed her from the lifestyle that she was going to be stuck in if the baby had stayed alive. So she was grateful in that sense, but she also felt really an immense sense of guilt for thinking that. But I'm kind of thinking that Jean-Marc and Chantal, they're trying to find their identity and what defines them. Yeah. So they're kind of looking at things that that define them as like evil, shitty people, and also as like intellectuals, and also as all these things, and they're jumping around. Like Jean-Marc sees himself as he doesn't belong in this bourgeois culture, not bourgeois culture, but like he feels like he's overachieving and punching above his weight, basically his weight class, and that he belongs with the vagrants and the drug addicts and like the dregs, what he sees as dregs of society. And he just imagines himself like being back there one day, like he's all on borrowed time. So that's in his mind. And then with the fake letters, Chantal, these letters kind of awaken something in her. So she's looking at that. When we find out that Jean, like she kind of looks around at different people and kind of thinks like, maybe it's that person. What does that mean about me? If it is this person or that person.
I feel like Chantel's story was more interesting to me. I think it was just her dealing with, like, changing, like I said earlier. Like, she was once a mother, no longer a mother. She was once a woman, now she's going through menopause, so that's, like, another emotional identity change, where she feels like she's getting older, because she talked about her age and how menopause is connected to the age, so she felt like she wasn't, quote-unquote, pretty anymore. So I feel like she was emotionally, I don't want to say unstable, but I was like, emotionally, she was going through a lot.
Yeah, no, it's true. I remember that. There's a line where she literally says, no one looks at me like that anymore.
Yeah.
So he tried to do that and it backfired.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that you mentioned that they allude to the idea that these people are in their 40s and 50s. Mm-hmm. But in my mind, I was imagining someone in their 30s or late 30s, early 40s, mid 30s, because they're worried about their careers in the way that I think people our age kind of do, and that the way that they're thinking about relationships. Like if she's in her 50s and she's still thinking about her, I mean, I guess I could see that she would still be thinking about her son that passed away. I forgot if it was in the womb or if it was
I can't remember
if it was when he was a little boy. But I like it's spoken about like it happened a couple of years ago. Like the baby died and she left the relationship a couple years ago. And the way that they kind of joke about this guy that she hooked up with that was in his 50s or something like that. And they call him something. They have a nickname for him, but I forgot what the nickname was. But they kind of make it seem like he was this older guy that she hooked up with kind of recently, but it was a little weird to follow at some points.
Yeah, I mean, there was like tangents, and I feel like for Jean-Marc, his big thing of identity, because it was kind of alluded to that because he had a best friend, Jeff, from a prior job. We found out that Jean-Marc was something like he got fired, and he felt like F didn't speak up on his behalf, but in the story it kind of says, well, I don't blame Jeff for speaking up for me because he too needed the job, and at this point it's like water under the bridge. But from descriptions in the book, you kind of hear that he's kind of like a jack of all trades. Like he did at one time, we talked about, like, I believe that he once was trying to go to medical school. Yeah. Then he dropped out. And then he was like a carpenter, but he stopped that. So he was doing all these spare jobs. And then pretty much the breadwinner in the relationship was Chantel. So I think Jean-Marc had some insecurities there about him not being able to have a steady job and him having to rely on Chantel for being the main source of income for the family. So I think that's like that. I think that from the writing, that kind of bothered Jean-Marc to some degree. And that was pretty much Jean-Marc's main storyline until when the whole letter situation happened. And for some reason, he was getting insecure because then he was like pretty much trying like to see like how would she react with these letters, and like he was getting jealous because she was hiding these letters in her brassieres, a very intimate space, and he was wondering why like she wasn't bringing up these letters. So like then he started building his own insecurity in their own marriage, which is slowly causing a rift between the two of them, because now he's saying with the way that she's acting with these letters, like hiding them, not telling him, now he's like, oh, this is the Chantel that I haven't seen in a while, or I've never seen, like, this is a new side of her. Why is she hiding this from me? Why is she being deceitful, even though he's writing the letters?
Yeah, well, he also started to realize, like, she kind of has this moment where she's like, screw it. Even if it's the homeless, crazy guy underneath the tree who's writing these letters, I'm all in, fudge it. Who cares? And so she wears this really nice red dress because that's what's referenced in one of the notes. And John Mark, you could tell that there's a moment of realization where he knows that she's doing it because of the letters, but that she doesn't realize yet that it's him. And that kind of sends him into a spiral. And for him, it kind of results in like an argument where he says things that kind of trigger her. And it also happens at the same time where Chantal's ex-husband's sister visits and just kind of drudges up all these things that reminded Chantal of the lifestyle that she was able to avoid. But for her, it results in kind of like the scene in Americana at the end where he ends up at that racetrack and ends up in a drunken, fueled orgy where he just kind of like, it gets violent and scary and he just kind of walks away.
Yeah.
And she kind of does this with an orgy.
Yeah. But like to pinpoint to like that at that point in the story, Chantal kind of figured out that it was Jean-Marc, and now she's trying to play with him, hoping that Jean-Marc will kind of confess like, oh, he's the writer of these letters, but he never once does. So she kind of plays into the letters, and like as she's leaving, he's like, "Where are you going?" She was like, basically like kind of for like, where I'm going kind of scenario. And then somehow magically, when she lands on the platform, she sees her coworkers on the train going to London. And like somehow she forgot that there's a business trip. That was the one thing I didn't quite get, but she hops on the train, and then Jean-Marc like kind of follows her on her journey as like he stands like another train and like follows her into London to make sure that she's not, I guess, because he also has a feeling that she's going to London to see this friend that she had a relationship prior. So now he's jealous. But at that point, she kind of put in his face, like, I know what you do all along. Why are you writing these letters? Why didn't you tell me? And she feels hurt and wounded. Like, why couldn't you just confess in the very beginning? Why did you have to play with me? Kind of scenario. And he was like, well, why don't you, like, it's like a back and forth. Like, well, why didn't you tell me? Like, if you figured it out, why are you making me keep this secret? It's like this weird back and forth thing, which I couldn't quite understand. And the miscommunication trope in any book, whether it's like romance or fiction, like it just annoys me. You're a woman in your 50s, you're a man in your 50s, why are you playing these games?
Yeah, but to me it's different because it's not like a horror movie where the idea is that they're so in shock and panicked that they're just making bad decisions, or that it's like a Disney movie where it's like, we know they're going to get together. Why can't we avoid this part of the story where they hate each other because they're just not talking to each other? But these people are like, that's what I thought was kind of interesting, is that I think it's easy to come very close to empathizing and sympathizing with these people, but then you're immediately pulled right out of it.
Nope. No sympathy. Nope.
No?
No.
Because like for a second, you might think, well, I understand why she's a little thankful having this thought of spinning her baby dying that obviously traumatized her. But then you're quickly thinking, like, wait a minute, she's obsessed with this. And then you realize why she was so desperate to escape the lifestyle that she was stuck in, that she believes that the baby brought her out of. But you're also an adult that could say no at any point and get out of that situation.
Yeah. And then as she's like, as she's in London, as Mike mentioned before, and this was, I don't know if because it was a short book and the pacing was kind of weird at certain points. Like there was moments when it felt like it took forever to get somewhere. And other moments was like, there was like a chapter and then we're in a whole different scene. Like, okay, where did this go? When she went to this friend's orgy's house, Jean-Marc does fall. He initially walked in, but he couldn't get through because I guess it was like a bouncer that wouldn't allow him to get past the foyer or whatever it was in that building. But he just saw a rack of clothes and he just knew that Chantal was in there. And then we go to the next chapter where Chantal is walking around naked in this house, watching this orgy. She wasn't partaking in anything, but she's just slowly figuring out like, oh, I actually don't want to be here right now. This is not what I actually wanted. And slowly the book ends with her like leaving. We have no closure. We have no idea what happened to Jean-Marc. It's like, or if she left, she was able to meet up with Jean-Marc again. But the book pretty much ends with her exiting the orgy, right?
Yeah, I think she, like you said, she realizes that she doesn't want to do it. She changed her mind, and she was doing it out of spite at that point.
Yeah, she just wanted to piss off Jean-Marc.
And I think there might have been the message of, this is what happens when you get too into your own head, and when society confuses someone into thinking that they don't have a place to belong, or that they belong somewhere different than what they think they should be in. But it's also shows, I think, the complexity of how people think and what they worry about and how they worry about things.
Or lack of communication with your spouse or partner.
Yeah, but it's normal. Like,
It's normal.
It's not like
To go to an orgy when you're pissed off to prove a point. Maybe for some people.
Yeah. Well, it's like, here it might not be orgies, it might be strip clubs, or like people that try to make people jealous and say, well, I'm gonna call my ex up. Or there are really shitty people out there, and there are people that don't say anything and stew. There are people that do all kinds of things. Like, I didn't think the communication was
just annoys me in general. Okay, Michael. So overall, if you had to give this Kisas, what did you give it?
I'm gonna give it 3.5 Kisas. I gave it a 4 on Goodreads because you can't give it a half mark. But I did like it. Like, I thought that the characters were interesting. I thought that what they thought about was interesting. It's a translation from, I think, French into English, and I think Kundera he's Czech, I think it says.
He's a French Czech. The Franco-Czech is what he said.
And so it's hard to compare the writing style to, let's say, Don DeLillo with Americana, which is something that came to my mind a lot while I was reading this. The Silent Patient.
I don't know why you made that comparison. That was the only comparison, was when he was following her.
I think the very beginning made me kind of think of it, but I don't really remember why. But this is still way better than The Silent Patient, I think. but it's very 90s. It's a similar structure where it's like advertising culture, and then the character, in their mind, they think that they're different. I'm not like the other people. I'm just doing it for money. And there's a point where Chantal, I think it was Chantal, that she used to be a teacher, and then she got into advertising after, I think. And it's just that obsession was interesting to me. But yeah, I feel like if you like Milan Kundera's other stuff, go for it. It's 160 pages. If you liked Americana, I would check it out. Have something to compare and contrast it to. And I think it's hard because it really bothers me that they're supposedly in their late 40s, early 50s, but they feel like they're our age. Like,
well, yeah, like, they're written in, okay. I'll give my Kisa now, and I'll go into my other tangent.
Okay, you go.
I give this two stars. It's not my cup of tea. It's the same rating that I gave Americana, so I guess that's on par with with everything. But I feel like for the characters, and that's what annoyed me. Again, I know I didn't believe in the communication thing. That pissed me off. Also, he wrote these characters as they're in 40s. Like, she's going through, I don't know if she's menopause or premenopausal, so she's at least 45 to 50. Well, Jean-Marc is younger than her, because there was a big notion of when they first met there was an age gap. So Jean-Marc is younger by a few years than Chantal, but like they're both written like they're in their early 20s. So like for people who are older, they're written like they act immaturely, and that was pissing me off. So it's a short read. If you want to read, like, I think this is within our whole booktube for this year. I think this is the second French book that we read, because your other pick, not Americana stuff. The Fall was also another French translation.
But that was like 80 years before.
I'm just noting that this is the second pick that you've had was French. So Mike has a theme. All I can say, it's a quick read. If you kind of want to have like this quick literary fiction, philosophical piece to squeeze in between weeds, then yeah, read Identity. Otherwise, this pick is not for me.
That's fair.
Can we pick a fun book next time?
You're picking all the fun books. So we're good.
Okay.
I mean, I appreciate characters that are more complex.
Are you saying my characters aren't complex?
No, I'm just talking about these where you get to see someone who outwardly would be, in some cultures and sometimes some points in the US, be seen as like these interesting people that are really thinking dark thoughts, but not stereotypically dark. It's something dark and weird, but also you can see the reason for it. And to me, it makes a character feel very real. Those kind of things are interesting to me. Even though it's twisted and messed up, I thought it was kind of cool. You'll get those kind of things in a lot of different stories in novels, but it isn't under the microscope in the same way. But yeah, all right. Well, thanks for hanging out this month and watching.
Just know that we post a video on the first Sunday of every month, so please check us out for the next one. Otherwise, like, subscribe, comment down below. Give Mike ideas for a fun literary fiction book that you think that we both would enjoy. More importantly, you think that Jenn would enjoy. Just give him slight suggestions.
Sure.
He's not going to do it.
Go for it.
Other than, see you in the next one.
All right. See ya.